righty, we have everybody joining us tonight for our board meeting on December 14th. And good to see you all amongst all of your other holiday happenings, I am sure. Thank you for being with us. While everybody is coming in, hopefully everybody can see that I put a link into the chat. And just reminding everybody that we are on a new site and system where we are posting our agendas for these meetings, as well as that will be the same site where you will see the minutes when they are approved. So it's really going to help us manage our documents and be transparent to you, the public, about what we're doing. So it's called Board Docs. So you'll see that. And you can look at that anytime, and we can make real-time updates to the agenda as we go along. So, because as we know, things move fast. So we've evolved this meeting a little bit. I know we were talking about community updates and community forum, communication forum, but we do look forward to that, hopefully when we can be together in person. So stay tuned for more on that in the spring. So what we're looking at tonight is our regular board meeting with a number of things that we do need to vote on. So I believe we can call the meeting to order at 6:10.
So Kristen, can I just take a minute before you jump into the thing? I just wanted to take a second and just as you were pulling up the audience and everybody's faces started popping up on the screen, there's just, I wanted to just recognize and say something about the really tragic passing of Shelley Braswell. She's somebody whose face I know I can always count on popping up on the screen and seeing in this meeting. Her service and commitment to this school was just, unparalleled. She cared so deeply, and just her passing is just heartbreaking. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that and just recognize and give my thoughts and prayers to her and her family and her husband Allie, who served on this board with us for a number of years and was a just awesome partner and somebody that I still reach out to for advice and help and things like that. And so it's just a real sad moment for us as a school, and we will certainly miss Shelley and everything the Braswell family's done for this organization. So it's something I had on my list to say, and then when you popped up all those faces, it just hit me like, wow, she's not going to be on the screen here tonight. And so just my prayers are out to the Braswell family. So sorry to start us off with a little bit of bad news and stuff, but she was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad.
Yep.
All right. Thanks for that. Appreciate that. All right. So for tonight, we have a few things to do. We have to look at our last meeting minutes from November 9th. We didn't have any public comments that we received in advance, but we do have an item to talk about, which is how we would like to handle our public comments going forward. Patrice and I had looked at some revisions to the guidelines that were previously in place going into 2022. We may want to talk about that and see if we would like to vote on that. And then a number of things regarding the high school building, a number of votes related to that specifically. I figure we'll get maybe a quick finance update in there, and then anything else from a committee perspective, and that should be about it for tonight. Okay. So we are going back to November 9th was our last board meeting. So you all have access to those minutes in your board doc site. So any edits, changes to those minutes?
I did a brief scan, nothing that I saw. I honestly didn't read through them as much as I should have tonight. So I will lean on my team here to help us.
Yeah, I didn't see anything that stood out as needing to be corrected either. So very detailed. Thank you so much for that recap.
Just looking now.
I failed to review them, so I commented this time. So I just want to make sure Brett's not leaning on me too much on that.
No,
on that
just
review.
going back through, now. I know we talked a lot about the building stuff, and so I think
Yeah.
we've covered that stuff there. The finance update, Philip, it looks clean to me.
Mhm.
If anybody needs more time to look at them, can do that. But if not, we can certainly entertain a motion to approve. And if anybody sees anything afterwards, we can always amend.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the November 9th meeting minutes as presented.
A second.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Do that real quick. Okay, so no public comments tonight, but we do want to briefly review. Again, this is something that you have as an attachment in your board docs, which is discussing how we would handle public comments going forward, with the assumption that in January, just gonna get here before we know it, we would begin our hybrid meeting approach, where we would have not only this option, but an in-person option as well. And also just thinking that we've kind of operated on the only submit by email approach for a while, so it may be time to revise and look at how we would do that. So what we did is went back to the guidelines that were previously in place and updated those. And I can just kind of speak to what I see as essential changes. Patrice, feel free to chime in, but we kind of talked through that together. And you can kind of read along as you see fit, but really just, letting people know that what we're doing here is all in a public record. I'm kind of mentioning the fact that all of this is going to be on our new board doc site in terms of the agendas and the minutes. Specifying a little bit regarding the seating that was already there, about when we are in person, that the board sits in one spot and the public sits apart from the board. From a virtual perspective, I thought maybe we would just call out that, specifically cameras tend to remain off unless you are a member of the board, a designated speaker that is, sharing something specifically. So there's that. Probably one of the bigger items, and I know Patrice, you were consulting a bit with Kevin on some of this, was when and time limits. So again, not that we've been in situations where we've had massive amounts of public input, but we're just kind of, anticipating that it would be a good idea to spell out some of this. Suggesting possibly putting in there that there are designated times for public input, which number one might be at the beginning of the meeting, which could go up to 30 minutes. And then possibly again, when we're about to conduct votes, that there might be up to a 15-minute period there where we could allow for commentary, up to, right? Maybe not needed at all, maybe only needed in part. There's a clarifier there about comments being focused on agenda items or items that are up for voting. If not, we need that, maybe we could discuss. We're still sticking with the 3 minutes, which is what was previously in place from an individual perspective, and whether you're attending in person or virtually, saying that we could allow this virtual opportunity to comment. You'll be allowed 3 minutes. You can still email in advance. You would need to let us know this is a public comment. We would read them aloud as we have done. we have a question as to whether or not you would need to provide your name on the email, or if you can submit an anonymous public comment. And then there was another general point about putting your thoughts to the board in writing anytime. I don't know if we need to say anything like that or not, but that's essentially the major elements of what is in that document now. So
Kristen, I just want to just interrupt for one thing. We do have some people in the waiting room.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't sure if Stacy had.
Yep, I got it.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, this is a document we've had for a long time. I think we've always had this where we've handed it out at the public meetings when we've had them, where when we had people sign in for the meetings. So I think this is just, so everybody's clear, it's just a revision and some clarifications of some things, especially considering when we've got virtual attendance now. So none of this stuff is really new. I think, to your point, Kristen, the big thing is, one, if we're going to limit up to 30 minutes of total speaking time at the beginning of the meeting. I can think of one time in the 6 years I've been involved with the board that we've had an instant where we've gone beyond 30 minutes. And I think, frankly, we held a special meeting that night anticipating we were going to get that. So, I would say up to 30 minutes. I don't know if that's something, Kevin, that it's then can be beyond the board's discretion to allow comments to continue. I don't know how we would handle that, but that to me would be a rare occasion. And then I think the second question I just have is, if I understand the concept of opening up public comment before we vote, there's a lot of things we vote on. And so are we saying it's for any item that we vote on, or significant things that we vote on? And I don't know if we would clarify that. Like, I get, when you're at a city council meeting, there's a particular agenda item. Most people come, hey, they're going to build something in my neighborhood. When they speak on that topic, I want to give my input on that. Like, I don't know that we have situations like that, but I mean, we could, whether it's a budget or some of these building decisions. But would there be, Kevin, and maybe I'm asking, you're maybe best person to answer some of these, but would we put some definition around, does it have to be everything? We have to be consistent, or would we be able to identify and delineate when we open that up?
And just a quick thought in relation to that, Brett, was that perhaps if we do that, we might need to put all the votes together at one time and maybe put it towards the end of the meeting. So right now we sort of sprinkle the votes throughout. Again, that's just kind of the flow, but you could hold them until the end. I think the thought was, if there are things that people learn throughout the meeting, as they're attending the meeting and listening and understanding, then maybe they would be better informed as they do make a comment. But it would require us changing the structure a little bit to hold the votes more until the end. So I don't know if we want to do that or not.
Brett, I'll respond to a couple of your thoughts. I think if in 6 years there was one occasion when public comment exceeded 30 minutes, that must have been a really important thing. And whatever people had to say that day was important for the board to hear. And I'm glad that you didn't have a time limit and everyone was heard. And I think that unless it begins being a problem where our ability to do business is disrupted, I would suggest that we just proceed without a time limit. If we discover that attitudes, cultures, and demographics change in a way that makes it difficult for us to do the business we need to do, we can revisit this policy. With respect to, each vote that comes before the board and comment, I can tell you what I'm accustomed to. I'm accustomed to a piece of the Sunshine Law that says that public comment must be taken by a board prior to its action on a proposition. And that's what's in Chapter 286, and that's not the clearest thing to understand. Not a lot of guidance comes along with that. That same statute does say that public comment about that proposition doesn't even have to be at the same meeting when the vote takes place. It might be something that you discuss over a series of meetings And at the end of that series of meetings, we vote. And on voting day, there is no public comment. So the flexibility is there to permit that public comment to occur at the beginning of a meeting or even at a meeting on a prior day, as long as people have fair notice that this is their chance to talk. Often what I see is that on things like approving the minutes or other relatively mundane things, there will be a motion, a second, the board will have an opportunity to discuss. The chair may say, is there any public comment? Hearing none, and then you take your vote. Most of the time, when the board has already hashed out whether to paint the fence gray or paint the fence brown, the public doesn't weigh in on that. All that said, if we wanted to, in our agenda, designate the items at which public comment would be taken and make it clear that if you want to talk about any of those other items, you need to do so during the free-for-all public comment at the beginning, we could do it that way. So for example, on tonight's agenda, where we see the purchase and sale agreement, that might have a star next to it, indicating that we will be taking public comment at that time. But the other items that are of more administrative or ministerial nature, if you want to talk about them, and we doubt anyone will, but they're welcome to, that would occur during the public comment period at the outset of the meeting. I think that might be a kind of balanced way of handling it.
I think some of this could be, you think about the prior meeting minutes and some of the administrivia, like that also could be something we wrap into a consent agenda, right? That just says, hey, here's these 5 things that we've always wanted to be able to get to having that consent agenda. So we don't need to hash those out every time. Like we just, the docs are there, we review them. If there's no comment from the board, we just vote on the package of consent agenda items and move on. And then to your point, things outside of the consent agenda would be things we would potentially open up for public discussion, right? I mean, certainly we want to hear public input on a lot of these things if there is. I just don't want us to be in a situation where like, oh, well, we're not going to take public comment on that one, but we'll take it on this one, right? Because that'll just be awkward. But I like the idea of just calling it out up front. If there's a way to do that in our new tool, Kristen, too, that'd be great to just say, hey, especially now that the agenda is more published in a public way where people can see what we're talking about and know what votes may come up that night. And I think that's a fair way to handle it.
Okay, so
We're
that's-
still taking email too, right? Like, so that's still like you could potentially still have that email come in prior once the agenda is shared as an option.
So I agree with Kevin. I'd say we strike the time limit, right? Until that becomes a problem we need to address, like we take those out. Just to be clear, we are going to allow public comment both virtually and in person, right?
Right. That's what we're suggesting at this point. You would allow for that. Yeah.
But there was a question about it being anonymous.
Well, if you come speak in the meeting, or you can't be anonymous. If
Uh,
somebody wants to email us something, and I would suggest we want people's names. People should, if they're going to send us something, we don't have to necessarily read their name aloud.
Well, they
Right?
could always send the board an email and say, I don't want this to be shared for public comment, right? Like, so it could just be an email to the board where they're just filling us in on an area. I don't know, Kevin. Is that not?
Seen? I do know we've seen some stuff in the past where we've gotten emails from, a fake account, right? Somebody went and created an account in a anonymous name and sent emails to this board, and there was no way to attach a real name to it. So
I was going to comment on that same part. Yeah, I think
that's the thing I don't want to
the
get into
name-
is if somebody can't put their name to something, then
the name
I don't
needs
really want to take
included,
it.
but I think they could request to have it not made public, right?
Mhm.
But
Totally agree.
especially as we, to blame high schoolers for all the ills of the world, even though we know that's not really where it all comes from. As we get more high schoolers, we could conceive of one finding it funny to send some scandalous,
Putting the ideas out
public
there,
gripe
I
to it,
know.
right? And then make it anonymous. Like actually, no one actually thought that. But if you actually have to put a name on it, there's someone that then we could follow up with. Knowing we've had times in our past where things were a little bit more, a little less stable or or routine. And I think the removal of the anonymous to the board is important, but if you want to withhold it, you don't necessarily want to say it to the world, that's acceptable. I think we can give the offer for it to be withheld, but we still need to know it.
Just would point out that this isn't parent comment, it's not parent and staff comment, it's public comment.
Right.
Anybody in the world gets to talk, and it's only of certain utility to require someone's name, because I could make one up and send you an email and pronounce myself a member of the public and have my comments read. So I do think that if we want to not read them all out loud, because we'd rather just post them in board docs, we could do that and everyone would see those comments and we'd have had the benefit of reading them. But we can do whatever the board's pleasure is, but I think that anonymity is a reality when it comes to public comment.
Yeah, you're right. I just think I'd suggest we asked for a name. I think that's what, when you sign up to speak at a public meeting for a municipality, they ask for your name and information, right? So
some do and some
You can
don't,
make one
but if
up
you
if
refuse to provide it, they're going to let you talk.
yeah, I mean, I'm not saying we don't have to take the comment, but we have seen some situations where there was some, rumors started or just misinformation shared via email. There's somebody's creating a fake account, and just try to be mindful of that. Now you're gonna have now all the high schoolers are gonna be out there creating
And I just wonder,
IP freely, sending us emails.
I just wonder how much do we want to encourage, for example, put your thoughts in writing to the board. And
Yeah.
is that, remember back to our sort of communication protocols and such, are we suggesting that people do that for us? Is that only, are we really only requesting it when we say, hey, give us a public comment? I mean, of course, yes, people are going to, act on their own free will and do what they want, but what are we encouraging? Are we encouraging people to write and contact the board directly? And if so, who?
Well, that's always been available, and I think that's always will continue to be available. So to your point, maybe we just keep this simple and say, look, if you want to provide public comment, either come to the meeting and speak in person, or you speak in person virtually on the Zoom meeting. You can always contact the board with your thoughts, but that's not going to be something we share in the public meeting, right? If you want to provide input, do it in person, either via Zoom or in the room.
But I think that would be my preference. And if any board member is so moved by an email that they receive or any other communication that they receive, they can report it to the group at the meeting.
I would agree too. I think it's important that the board is available to the community to be heard from them. And if they're willing to take the time to send an email and want to send it to us, I know I, for one, am willing to read it. I think the important part is to know the broader board isn't going to action directly on theirs. Like we've talked about, it's not important that 7 board members follow up with one person who sent an email to the board. So if they want more of a specific action item, they need to go to the administration, they need to go to the board president. But I think I've appreciated the feedback that we have gotten from those who sent stuff to the entire board over the last 2 years. And I wouldn't want to give the impression that we're a cold board who doesn't want to hear from the community. So I think encouraging, send your thoughts to the board, send them as an email. Don't send action items to the board at large. Is the board aware, and are you taking action on this? No, that's not the proper format for that. That would be coming to meetings and following up with, the administration and the board president.
I may have missed this, but pre-virtual, did we read the email comments, or was it always just speaking only?
Yeah, we didn't, to my remembrance, I don't think we emailed. We didn't suggest emailing comments. We did the email in advance as we went to virtual to just sort of manage to some degree the comments.
Yeah, so I mean, if that worked before the in-person, or at this point virtual as well, I say that would be ideal, right? If that was suitable previously. Certainly we adapted for the past 2 years, and people know how to reach us if they'd like to email us, which we certainly address when we get that communication.
And part of this is also that I've recognized that we have not visibly publish these anywhere in these virtual meetings, right? I recognize that. So I'm trying to also make sure that going forward, whether you're attending in person and it's on the printed page by your sign in, which is how it used to, we used to print this out and people sign in. Now we have this, trying to find the new way of, now we need to make sure that people see these guidelines and are aware of them, such that if they do choose to speak virtually, they have some awareness of what the guidelines are around that. So, which somehow we can do that through the board docs or this, Zoom, and we'll figure that out. That's no problem. I'm just recognizing that, it just may be that time to refresh everybody on what this all, how we're doing this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with AJ on, if it's something that needs to be shared during a board meeting, then you would either present that virtually, with sign up through chat if we want to do that, or prior to the however we want to do the virtual sign up. If somebody's still doing the virtual option, maybe they just put it in the chat that they want to sign up for public comment, or when they're actually in person, they can just say, fill out the actual sheet to sign up, prior to the start of the meeting, and accept those public comments verbally. And of course, our emails are always open and never going to close. The other thing I would like to see us do too, kind of in this realm, and that's going to be on, I think, on your end, and that's just to add CC, closed caption, on our Zooms, just to make it a little bit more accessible. Kristen, that's something possibly moving forward we could just have. I don't know if we have any hearing impaired family members or, community. I'm sure that we do. So I'd just like to offer that we're, meeting their needs too.
And so does that involve having the transcript on?
Yep, that's all you push. You could do it right now. You just go enable transcript.
Okay. Let's see. Security. Figure out how to do that. You know what the button is that I push? I could try it.
Yeah, it should just be. Do you have like let me see. I don't have the host option here. It should be like under, if you have a more button down there on your screen, or enable live transcript. Do you see that down there at the bottom as one of your options? Let me see what it looks like. I'm the host, I forget.
The reason I'm asking is because I was looking into checking with Dave to see, and Patrice, could I get an enhanced Zoom account? Because I think at least I'm seeing a message that says they're going to put the time limits back on in January. So at minimum, we need to kind of get around the time limit situation if they're not going to keep extending that due to COVID or whatever. So I'm just wondering if I have that that option, and maybe with the limitation on number of participants and things like that. I was
right.
We need to get this upgraded to be whatever the next level is.
We can do that, Kristen.
Yeah,
I'll work with Dave, make sure we get you on.
Yeah, because anyway, I'm not seeing that. I'll explore that transcript idea. So, okay. So good discussion. Any other discussion? So the things that I noted were, we want to take out the time limits. We want to designate items where additional public comments will be taken. Otherwise, people would comment up front. We would have people write their name in the emails, and they could say, hey, I don't want it to be read out, which is fine. And we try to add the transcripts. So beyond that, I think that we might need to vote on this. So do we want to go ahead and vote on approving this with these amendments, or do we want to draft further and wait to vote? But I think we might need to vote tonight to try to adopt it if we're going to enact it in January. So how do we feel?
Just to clarify, you said on the comments that we would still take comments and read the comments like as a general inbox, or we would take the comment if it was directed to a board member, it would be at their discretion if they wanted to share in your
I'd
notes.
suggest we only accept comment in person, either in the room or online via Zoom.
Correct. Yes.
Leave it at that.
Yes.
Public can always contact the board via email at any time for anything, but that's not necessarily something we'll use as official public comment at a meeting.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so we are going to eliminate accepting public comments via email with this.
For the board meetings, our emails are still open for them to address things, right? But
We can
in
send a
relation
public
to the,
comment. Yeah, we just won't
Yeah.
read it in the meeting.
I move to adopt this, what do we call it?
community member
Guidelines.
attendance and participation guidelines.
I move to adopt them with the first two of Kristen's amendments, which had to do with removing time limits and designating agenda items for additional public comment, but without Kristen's third amendment, and with Brett's, which would eliminate the option of public comment via email. And I'll say it just to avoid confusion, we're always welcome to send emails to board members, and board members will read their emails. And if a board member wants to bring a topic up that was delivered by email, welcome to do it, and those will still be public records, but otherwise not part of the public comment policy.
Okay, and they would just read it aloud themselves, essentially,
Yeah.
whatever they want to say. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, somebody emails me something and we're doing a public comment I could choose to say, hey, I did get this via email. I'll share this with you guys now. Like, you don't have to be, we're a pretty small community, so
Sure.
I don't think we're gonna have too much trouble here. We'll just keep it simple. Somebody sends it and we choose to share in the meeting, we could sub the board's discretion. But I don't think that needs to go in the guidelines document.
Agreed.
And just to confirm, when we say eliminating time limits, we're only referring to the 30-minute time limit for the overall contribution, not the 3-minute time limit per person, right?
That was my intention with my motion, Philip. Thanks for clarifying. That's important.
Strike time limits.
Stickler for the details.
overall.
Yeah, so just the 30 minutes and 15-minute pieces, those two
Right.
sub bullets, I would just strike those.
That was a close one. Thank you.
Suddenly we've got one person talking for 45 minutes, Yeah.
Yeah, still keep
Filibuster.
minutes, 3 minutes per individual. Yes.
Yeah,
You can't come filibuster at this meeting.
correct.
All right, so Kevin's put a motion on the floor with the proposed amendments. Kristen, I think if you've got those captured, we will look for a second.
I'll second the motion.
All right, so Kevin motioned with the amendments, Stacy second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? All right, so motion carries pending those amendments. Kristen, just circulate the document when it's been updated, and we'll certainly, I think this is something we post now on board docs, right? That'll be accessible via board docs as part of the agenda for the meeting.
Exactly. So we'll make sure, I would probably just post it there every time, just as a standard document that everybody sees. So, yeah. Mhm.
Does, all right, now I will hold my question. Never mind. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of this anymore. Next topic.
All right. Let's see. Okay, got that all captured. Good. So we're going to turn over to Patrice for your report and updates on the high school building. So over to you.
Okay, thank you. And it's a big group for December, so it's exciting to see everybody. A couple of faces reminded me of just a few things that I wanted to share as we really look forward to getting back to a little bit of normal things that we're used to in this community. And if you didn't get a chance to see Almost Maine, which was the IMHS theater production this last week, it was just such a delight. And it was Lily and the high school students did such a fantastic job. And it was just great to be in person too. So just hats off to all of them. Also wanted to bring up that we've started our basketball program. So I see a few people, Christy Thorson, I just wanted to call out as a parent who's been also helping with Coach Naya. So we know Naya as our nurse, but she's also Coach Naya right now, and she's running the basketball program for us. Jamie LaFuego is in the background right now. His personal work commitments are keeping him pretty tied up, but she has about 25 students coming out from middle school and high school. So, and I think there are some upper L students as well. So anyway, so it's really exciting that they've gotten that off and running. So I just wanted to give a call out for that. We are all things building, as the board knows, as we've been going through different phases of working through the high school building. We are really excited that we did have a very positive meeting with Mayor Johnson, Rusty Johnson, Stacy, Vice President Stacy with the board, and myself met with Mr. Johnson, Mayor Johnson last week on Friday. And it was almost like, you had to wonder, like, okay, maybe we don't even have to have our special exception meeting. Maybe we just kind of plowed this through, but it was really great. He was just very supportive of the school. Again, just saying a lot of things that we have felt for some time, which is they love what we've done so far. And they feel like us being in that space certainly will add to that utility. So we're really excited moving forward, and knowing that we have his, he was really specific about his backing, and he insisted that any meetings that I have with anybody else going forward, make sure that I call him and try to make sure he's a part of those meetings. So again, it was just a really supportive meeting. Stacy, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, it was just nice to see that from the city level, they really do appreciate the gym that is IMO. They appreciate the look that we have, the students that we support, and the community that we're building. And so he was just really appreciative of it. And it was that was nice to hear that was coming from the city level. And he's excited to see how we're going to transform that space in Ocoee as well.
So the next thing that we all know is we do have a finance committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow. So Richard Moreno will be there as our municipal advisor for the bond process that, as you realize, we're kind of doing that hand in hand with the purchase and the sale agreement. So I have sent you the latest update for the purchase and sale agreement from Melissa. It came later this afternoon. But the good news is that this also included the input from Green Access and their lawyers. And really the only thing that was needed, there was an update in the description of the property that Melissa had to note. The other thing that Melissa did say and did call out, that as we, as you know, I've also asked you to have a vote tonight on title council. And with that, we need to also call out who would be handling the escrow portion of this agreement, because specifically in this purchase sale agreement, this version asks that within 3 days of the signature on this purchase and sale, that we have the deposit in hands with the attorney that is going to be handling the deposit escrow. So that was the other piece, that this is a part of this agreement that we would be voting on tonight. For the purchase and sale agreement, we would also be going along and voting on the special exception zoning council, which is also what we, and I'm encouraging us to have as the title council. And that's the group that's called the Shuts. They used to be called Shuts and Bowen, but I don't think they're called Shuts and Bowen anymore. I think that they are just Shuts. And our particular counsel, her name is Elisa Soul. And so I sent you that information. And the next step would be to have a vote. And Kevin, I don't know if you suggest we need to have it separately, because the PSA is tied to the fact that we do have to have the title council called out for the title council as well as for the escrow for the deposit.
Yeah,
thought we
I
could
would-
vote on this. Sorry, go ahead.
I would
Kevin.
vote on engagement of counsel separately from your purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah.
And probably walk through the fundamentals of that purchase and sale agreement before we push ahead on it.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's the purchase sale agreement. Then there's the engagement with Schutz Bowen to do special exception and title of counsel, right? To
Right.
all of that together. And then the third is
Well, it's actually now it's the
an escrow.
special exception zoning title as well as the escrow for the deposit.
Right. Okay.
So
So
I
let's-
anticipate that Schutz and Bowen's scope of work will involve doing the title work. And title insurance is really, it is insurance, and it guarantees to the person who purchases real estate that they own it and will be able to use it. And if for some reason it turns out that the seller didn't have the rights to sell it to us, the title insurance kicks in and makes us whole. That's important to us. It's even more important to our lender, because they won't lend us money if their collateral can't be guaranteed to them. And so that is what the title council, as Patrice was calling it, would be doing. They would be the title agent actually selling us that insurance policy. That happens at closing. You have to identify them earlier so they can get the work done. In fact, we would identify them right away. But for the purposes of this purchase and sale agreement, it actually requires us to fill in a blank as to who would be the escrow agent. And that party's role is to hold the deposit. When we sign this thing and both sides have reached an agreement, we're going to make a $50,000 deposit to be held by this escrow agent. And the escrow agent's job is to either apply it towards the purchase price or to give it back to us in the event that we, for a reason we're allowed to, bail out on the deal, or to give that $50,000 to the seller if we, for a reason we're not allowed to, bail out on the deal. And so that person who holds that money, our escrow agent, has to be identified in this agreement. Anybody can do that as long as they're a title agent or a law firm that everyone trusts. And all of the names you've heard about today would be appropriate for that. So it isn't a huge deal who does that. I think for convenience, Melissa Arnold had suggested that Schutz and Bowen could do that because they're also going to be our title agent. And it's just getting that in the hands of one group. If Melissa has suggested that Bryant Miller and Olive BMO do that, that would have been fine too. We just have to fill that blank in. I'm certain that either will be willing to play that role, to take our $50,000 and put it in their trust account pending the outcome of this deal.
So that's separate from the engagement we'll have with her as the zoning council as well, right?
That's right. So we're proposing that Schutz and Bowen and Elisa would be engaged as land use council to do the zoning work, also to assist us with any real estate issues that come up along the way. And if you take a look at that engagement letter, you can see they've quoted an hourly rate. Ideally, there aren't lots of real estate issues that come up along the way, but there may be some. And they would help us fix those at that hourly rate. By doing it hourly instead of by a flat fee, we're not paying a whole lot if there isn't a whole lot of work, but they would be properly compensated if there is. I think it's appropriate for this kind of, I personally think it's appropriate for this kind of transaction to do it that way. So after they prepare this title commitment that says they promise to get us title insurance, they would then identify any issues that need to be resolved in order for them to give us that insurance. And that's one of the important things that a title company does. They don't want to give us insurance that everything's fine unless they're certain that any little warts on that real estate have been worked out before you get to closing. And that's the work that they would do. Hopefully it's clean, the title is clean, as they say, and there aren't a lot of those tasks to do. But if there are, they would help us make sure that those tasks were done. So those are kind of the dual roles. Land use is going to the city and getting approval to use the building the way we want to. The title work is agreeing to provide that insurance to us at closing. And then finally, just being the escrow agent means that they'll take our money and hang on to it and not lose it.
So should we look at this maybe with Schutz and Bowen as two separate transactions, one on the land use side for the zoning, and then the second being that title and escrow? Did she give us two contracts for that, Patrice?
No, I talked to Elisa about that this morning, and she took another look at the terms of her engagement letter. And we both believe that it's broad enough that it could cover all of this work.
Okay.
We kind of had the choice to include or not include whatever components we want to. So we could today approve only part of that work. But if we want to do it all, the engagement letter she's provided is sufficient. It's good enough. It's got a broad scope.
All right, so we'll look at this, I think, then in the three parts as you laid it out, Patrice, right? We've got the purchase sale agreement. Certainly want you to walk us through the pertinent points on that. Kevin, thank the excellent job of kind of just laying out the different aspects of the legal engagement here. So we'll have a vote on engagement with Schutz and Bowen. And then the third piece we'll get to is the bond counsel. So as we go forward with the bond finance, separate from this real estate transaction, but as we get the financing side of this, engaging Kareem Sprouting from Bryant Miller as our bond counsel. Right, Patrice, sound good?
Yep, that sounds good. And what, you know what, except for right now, Kevin, if you would mind starting the PSA, I just realized my battery is starting to die and I've got to go get my battery. So, I mean, my plug. I'll be right back. Sorry.
I'm happy to just walk through what I thought were some of the highlights. This was prepared with the assistance of Melissa Arnold. I don't know if she did the whole drafting work here. Obviously, us lawyers, we start with forms and then just modify them for the transaction at hand. I think this may have been used with Building Hope previously. And so Melissa did our drafting work. Yeah. And so this was negotiated. It has a lot of the bells and whistles that you would expect from a commercial real estate contract. Probably the biggest headline is that we're agreeing to pay $5,972,667.50, or $6 million for us simple people, for this real estate. This involves making a deposit of $50,000 up front, which would be applied towards the purchase price. Now, the good news is that we get 60 days to look around at the property and make sure that everything is what we expect it to be. And we can get out of the deal for pretty much any reason or no reason if we're not satisfied with what we see during that 60-day period. And that gives us a little bit of comfort that things are going well with the city, things are going well with our financing, and things are going well with the high school generally, because if any of those things were to start going sour, we'd want to know that we could exit this transaction. If we do that, we get our deposit back. That's what's good about this. Furthermore, because things take a little bit longer with city approval sometimes, we have an additional period of time of, I want to say 120 days for the land use approvals to be completed after the due diligence period ends. And so we have a lot of time to get those things done. Now, if we get to the end of those periods, it's 180 days. I'm sorry, looking at it now, it's 60 plus another 180 to get those land use approvals. So again, if for some reason Ocoee won't approve us to use this property in the way we want to, our deposit would be returned to us, which makes us feel good. On the other hand, there isn't anything here that says that if we're unable to close our financing, or if we just change our mind because we think it would be neat to change our mind, or high schools go out of style, if any of those things were to occur after the first 60 days and we wanted to back out, the seller would be entitled, as the end of the deal, to keep our $50,000 deposit. I wasn't part of the negotiations, but Patrice and Melissa definitely were. I know that Brett was very much looped in on all this and might have been on some of these calls too. Our seller here wasn't going to do this deal with us if we got to just get out of jail free at any time. because we thought the price was too high. We get cold feet, high school goes out of style. And so while some contracts might have more contingencies that allow the buyer to get out of them, this one doesn't, but that's what we had to do to get the deal done. And we understand that this $50,000 deposit is at risk. For all the good reasons you'd want to get out of a deal, within a reasonable time, we're able to get out of the deal because of this feasibility period and development approval period. So those were the things that I thought were kind of important to me on this. Everything else is a lot of what you would normally see in one of these contracts. I know that Melissa was comfortable with the form and advised us that we'd kind of done the best we could after negotiating with the sellers on all of these things. You'll see that there is a blank left where the name of the person who's going to hold our deposit will be entered. I think that we can approve this assuming that it'll be Schutz and Bowen. Although if we don't end up doing that, we can just replace that. Patrice, I talked about the price and I talked about the feasibility and what would keep us in the deal and what would get us out of the deal. There's a lot of other information here that everybody's had a chance to review. I am not your lawyer here, Melissa is. She's done a great job on this, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any that might be within my.
The only thing I was going to say too is something that we did investigate with talking to Melissa too, just in terms of, that typically, you buy a home, it's contingent, on the financing. And so we don't have one of those, get out of jail, cards easily. We did feel that the $50,000 was certainly the high school. And I know that we joke about high schools pulling these kind of pranks around all sorts of things, but our high school kids really don't do that kind of stuff. It's mostly our middle school kids. But anyway, we love our high school students and feel like this $50,000 is worth the risk, while at the same time, and I think this was Kevin's idea when we were talking with Melissa, it kind of came up with an idea that we're going to, it's outside of this PSA, so I want to make sure you know that. But what we wanted to do is when we start engaging with Elisa more around the special exception, we may be able to work the special exception out so that it's contingent on the bond financing. So that if we use that language at the special exception, that would kind of give us another layer of getting out of this if something were to happen and everything crash and burn and all of a sudden interest rates are at 20%. It's not going to happen, but we were just trying to loop through like what could be another safety hatch. And so again, it's outside of the scope of the PSA, but it is something that we're going to, I'm going to investigate a little bit when we start engaging her on the special exception.
In other words, I think Ocoee is not interested in changing the permitted uses of this property if they find out that we can't possibly buy it. And so while there is still an end to that development approval period, they may very well refuse to give us a development approval if they find out that our financing can't happen and we can't possibly buy it. They don't want to approve a use that nobody wants anymore. And so while there is not a financing contingency, it may be that there are, other ways out because we just can't get approved for our land use under the circumstances if that should come up. We'll do everything we can in good faith to get those approvals. We're not going to sandbag the approvals to avoid having to close this deal. That wouldn't work. We're going to do everything we can to get the approvals, but Ocoee may pull the plug if they find out that we can't perform.
Any other questions that you might have? Everything else that was a part of the LOI is a part of this agreement as well. And the only other things I can tell you just in terms of the way in which our due diligence, because that's a part of this time period that we're operating on, we've been able to move pretty quickly through some of this due diligence. And so we've engaged everybody. And that was also our plan, is that if we make those things happen, along the way in which we're also securing the sale agreement, it just provides us a little bit more cushion as far as time goes.
Was there I may have missed this, was there an expected closing date in the timeline on this? Or a
So
range?
that's where we're probably going to get into more of that tomorrow.
Gotcha.
Because if you remember, the bond proceeds are a part of this whole, process as well.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think
They
our
do that.
intention would be to line up the bond closing and then be able to turn right around, hopefully with all the, land use, stuff in hand and go close the real estate deal.
It
the
would be
same time, right?
simultaneous. Yeah, it would be simultaneous. So AJ, the feasibility period is some amount of time up to 60 days. The development approval period is some amount of time up to 180 days beyond that. So you have a total of 240 days in which potentially we could still be seeking these approvals. The closing date has to occur within 60 days of the end of all of those things. So we're looking at almost a year before this is going to have closed. And sometimes you see extensions. It's not uncommon at all. We get close to the end of our feasibility period. We're still interested, seller's still interested, but we haven't gotten that report back on the plumbing that it would get extended. So it's hard to say. I think that the time frame is driven largely by the bond underwriter who we haven't engaged yet. We'll know a lot more. The underwriter is the one who will generally distribute a schedule with all the various tasks that have to be completed. And we don't even know who that is yet. So
We are hoping that tomorrow, when I talked with Richard, he and Brett had asked as well as that we seek, at least 3 other people as far as underwriters. We have worked with PNC before, so hopefully they'll be one of the underwriters, but we want to also seek some others as well. And we're hoping that again, that will be something that will be discussed tomorrow. So we can determine an underwriter and kind of move along in that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately we all know our desired timeline on this is like to have a deal close in the early spring or sometime in the spring so that we can start construction and renovations, at that property and be in a place to open in August, right? I mean, we're doing everything we can to align timelines back to an August, opening or occupancy. So to your point, Kevin, yeah, the financing piece will dictate that, and our hope, Patrice, not the sidebar on that, but I don't know if you've talked to Richard about expectations for tomorrow, but I want to make sure he can, like I said, we've had lots of conversations with Richard. I want him to kind of take us through, here's what's going to happen, like take us through the details and like show us the plan.
Absolutely.
He
And
likes
I think
to talk and he's great at it, but I like take us through something in writing here that shows us what we're doing, right? I need to get specific. So, all right, so that covers the PSA. Do you want to open up for questions or comments from the board on the sale agreement?
I wanted to comment, thank you guys for doing such an excellent overview on it, because I've given it I'd at least skimmed the whole thing and read through it, but your recaps were very nice to get the details. Any of those additional questions I had, you kind of confirmed everything. So thanks for the excellent overview.
I read the thing a bunch of times and Kevin made it sound a lot easier for me to understand over the last 5 minutes. I'm like, dang, you could have just told me that a month ago and I wouldn't have to read this thing so many times. That
he's
was
a
very
part
good
of my
job.
speed dial now, so Kevin is, so.
Like it.
All right.
Yeah, I'm good. I don't have any questions on it. Thank you for the very detailed and much clearer point of view, Kevin. I agree. I was in the same boat as Brett on that, reading it multiple times beforehand.
Yep, I'm fine. I was mostly curious about kind of what you talked about with the contingency items. And I think your explanation at the end summed that up with, city approval and those items. So I'm good.
And so I think the key point you made, Kevin, around the $50,000 risk here, and Patrice, I think you covered this as well. But I think that's the key thing for us to know is we execute this deal and we can't pull it off. The risk we have is 50,000. I don't think that's going to break the bank. At the end of the day, for us as an operation, so our organization, so I think we could sustain that hit. It'd be ugly, but we'd survive, and wouldn't be the end of the world for us, but it's a big hit. But it's the risk. To Kevin's point, we've negotiated this. It's reasonable, and I think we've got enough opportunities, along the way to deal with this in an appropriate way. So I think it's a manageable risk.
Totally agree with you, Brett. It's weird, a little bit weird to be in a position as an organization that we could take a $50,000 hit and be able to say, ouch, that hurt, and keep going. But realistically, we are there. And the factors are in a great place where you lined up a lot of those contingencies where we would get out, and then the added little piece of where it's not even 100% guarantee that if the financing did fall through, we may still have that out. That's by not having the zoning approval come through, so then we still get the exit. And overall, it's not like we haven't talked to our mortgage broker, so to speak. Right? We've been doing quite a bit of conversation. Is it reasonable to get that bond? Is it all there? So I think we've got a lot of good reasons to expect that the bond approval would go through. There's always extenuating circumstances of the world falls apart and things don't go as planned, but I would agree. And 50,000 is worth the risk for our high schoolers.
All right, so we'll table that one. We've kind of addressed the Shuts Bowen engagement. Is there anything else we need to talk about with that? Or can we move to, I guess I'll ask the board, do you guys have any questions about how and what we're going to engage them for? And then I don't know if we've really touched on the Bryant Miller engagement, Kevin, but you can probably walk us through that one lastly, and then we can probably lay these out for some votes. Any questions on the Shuts Bowen stuff?
No.
Kevin, can you kind of give us the layman's overview of the bond counsel engagement?
So the primary function of bond counsel is to issue an opinion at closing that the debt we're incurring is a valid debt that we're allowed to incur, and that all the conditions that we have to meet in order to incur that debt have been met. The other big piece of their opinion, which is critical to the bond investing community, is an opinion as to whether or not the interest that we pay will be taxable to whoever receives that interest, the investors that lend us the money. They're going to get interest payments from us. The reason we go through Ocoee and don't just borrow directly is because Ocoee as a city can borrow money where when the interest is paid, the investor, the lender, doesn't have to pay taxes on it. It's tax exempt financing. So that's critical, and that's really a huge part of what bond counsel does. The most important part of their opinion is on the taxability or non-taxability of the interest paid on these bonds. For that, they are paid a lot of money. The headline figure in this engagement is $100,000. That amount is paid at closing from bond proceeds in the cost of issuance account. So it's capitalized, so to speak. It's not money we have to come out of pocket for. And they understand that they're unlikely to get paid anything if we don't close. So there's two parts to what they're being compensated for. One part is a lot of work. And Patrice, you'll see this. There will be hundreds of emails whirling around as we approach closing with people preparing revisions and changes and new sections and more revisions to indenture documents and loan agreements and the form of the bonds themselves and a million exhibits that go with those things. And bond counsel quarterbacks all that. When you get to their closing, they will walk in with 35 manila folders, each of which has a signature page in it. And that's how many different documents that are going to be part of this closing. Bond counsel quarterbacks all that. So while Shuts and Bowen will handle the title work, they will handle the things that we record that anybody who's ever bought a house has seen before, like deeds or releases and satisfactions, those kinds of things. Assignments of easements, exciting stuff. The documents associated with this, publicly, invested, publicly traded debt that we're going to be issuing will all be done by bond counsel. The other, I said, a big chunk of that money is to compensate for all the work that is done. The other chunk of money, the reason it's a big number like this, is that bond counsel takes on a lot of exposure because they're putting their name on the dotted line, guaranteeing to anyone who underwrites our debt or who buys the debt that it is in fact tax exempt, that we were in fact allowed to issue that debt. And if it turns out that it's taxable, bond counsel could be on the hook for some or all of that. And so this is a little bit of an exposure premium as well that we're paying them. If you add up all the hours they work and divide it by this $100,000, that rate seems outrageous, but it's a little bit like insurance that we're required to buy to do this. We can't do this without title insurance. We can't do this without a bond counsel opinion. And that's where that money's going. So I think that the engagement that Kareem Spratling has sent us from Bryant Miller Olive is typical of these kinds of engagements. Bryant Miller Olive is one of the better known law firms in the state for issuing bond opinions. They're maybe the biggest bond counsel in the state in terms of volume of transactions. I've had deals involving them before, including conduit issuances like this one, including somewhere Kareem was the guy that showed up with the manila folders. So I have confidence that their opinion will be respected by the underwriting and investing market. And I would suggest that this would be an appropriate engagement for us.
Thank you, sir.
I'm thankful to have you, Kevin, your opinion.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Agent.
No doubt. Well said. So look, I think, Kevin sums it up. Here's why we've got to do it. It's got to be done. Bryant Miller is the reputable firm in town that we've got personal experience with. I think the city of Ocoee works with him, Kevin, quite a bit too. So there's a lot of familiarity there, right?
I should have said that. So most municipalities have a go-to bond counsel that they use whenever they want to borrow money. And the city of Ocoee already has Bryant Miller Olive on retainer as their bond counsel. So it actually does raise a little bit of an awkward moment for people that hear that, because if these guys are Ocoee's counsel, are they also going to represent us? And the answer is that bond counsel has kind of a unique independence. They sort of represent us because we're paying them, but the transaction and our interests and Ocoee's interests are aligned. We think that while we could probably find a cheaper bond counsel out there if we wanted to shop this around or do an RFP, that even if we did, Ocoee would turn around and hire Bryant Miller Olive to take another look at it and issue opinions on behalf of Ocoee. And Ocoee doesn't do that for free. They would charge that dollar for dollar direct back to us anyway as a cost of issuance. So even if we hired a different bond lawyer to do this work for us, we'd still be hiring through the city of Ocoee, Bryant Miller Olive to be issuing its opinions on their side of the deal. So this is probably a more efficient way of doing it. Bryant Miller can certainly provide comfort to our school and the city of Ocoee at the same time. We don't have to involve an extra law firm, which would be financially inefficient. I think we all recognize.
It is. Tracy, anything you want to add?
No, just exactly like everyone said, really appreciate Kevin's, expertise in this area. And both with Kareem Spratling and BMO, as well as with Schutz. Schutz also works closely with the city of Ocoee, so that's also another plus for using Schutz as well. I just wanted to add that.
So any other questions on our bond engagements for this deal, Schutz or BMO? Cool. Are we ready to kind of lay these out for a vote, Patrice? Anything
Yes.
else we need to cover on these?
No.
Okay. So, I'll open the floor. Then we're gonna another discussion for a motion on the, on the purchase sale agreement. Kevin, you're good at this, man. Keep rolling. Don't stop now.
Which one was first?
Yes, say.
Disagreement, right? The big one?
Yeah, the purchase sale agreement.
Probably need to do that one first, right? Vote to purchase and then do the other things associated with the purchase, so.
Move to approve it, PSA.
Anything other than that, as it's been presented?
That's right.
Cool. Keep it simple.
I'll
All right, so
second.
got a motion to approve the PSA as presented, second from Stacy. Any other final questions? Signing up for $6 million.
That's right.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Well done. All right, so now we can we'll open a motion on the approval of the agreement with Schutz Bowen for zoning, title, and escrow council. We want to make a motion to do that.
I'll motion to move forward with it as presented.
All right, got a motion to accept the Schutz Bowen engagement. We have a second.
Second.
What are we calling it? Say it again.
The agreement with Schutz Bowen as zoning, title, and escrow council. Does that sound right, Kevin?
That is fine with me.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right, motion carries. And then we'll open for one last on the Bryant Miller Olive engagement as bond counsel as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the bond council as presented.
Okay. A second.
Second.
All right, AJ seconds. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? All right, motion carries.
Right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
These are big
Thank you.
decisions.
Okay, wait, do we need a separate vote for the authorizing the deposit for the escrow?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah.
Did we need that?
Well, no, there is supposed to be a separate vote for that too.
Saw that in your note about what Melissa said. We need
Yep.
to record that, so.
Yep. Thank you. Good catch. I meant to put that in the note and I didn't.
Okay, maybe I didn't catch her last email. So I saw there were some emails right at the end of the
That
day.
was
So
the last one, yeah.
Yep.
what's the issue there?
So it's basically just approving for the $50,000 to be given as escrow deposit. Well, for deposit in escrow for what we just voted on for Schutz and Bowen. That would be, and I know Dave is listening, that would be something that we have to make sure happens within 3 days of this PSA being signed.
Can we approve that essentially as approval of the PSA? She just wants a second vote to approve that.
It's a big dollar amount. It's probably worth having the separate, just
Yeah.
something along the lines of saying, I motion that the board approves a $50,000 deposit to be paid upon completion of the PSA to our escrow agent.
Sounds good. Philip.
Sounds
Who's gonna
good.
second
Good
that
job,
motion?
Philip.
I'll second that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kristen, do you need it again? Probably.
What was the end part of that? I'm sorry. You said approve the 50K deposit.
To our escrow agent.
On completion or upon execution of the purchase
Yeah.
agreement.
On completion of the PSA.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And it ties it in with all the other votes we just did, where
Right.
we defined the PSA and approved it, and we defined the escrow agent.
So just to close that motion out, we had any opposed to that? Say nay.
Who was seconding?
I second it.
Stacy seconded. We had, I think, unanimous approval of that. Just want to make sure nobody said nay, and motion carries.
I probably should have told you this before I so motioned, but I touched base with Dave this afternoon. Agreed we have enough cash sitting around, we can make it work. So
Dave might be laying on the floor right now, but gives
Not
him
based on his Zoom profile picture in front of me.
He's holding his breath.
He gave us a thumbs up too soon. So
I see it.
he's good.
Thanks, Dave. We appreciate you.
Okay, so I think, Patrice, you made it through your report of a few updates, and we covered all the.
Do you want to cover anything? Sorry, on the, so we covered those things around the new building. Can you just chat real quick on the Z development stuff for the current campus? And then I know there's the activities that are taking place on the new building that you've got listed here. You want to just touch on those
Yeah,
tasks at
real-
hand, just so the board understands where we're at with those.
So basically, we have gone ahead and we've had a few questions came back first for the IMO campus. A few questions came back around the traffic study that the city had. And so I've met with the sergeant, and we sent some notes back that were sent to Z Development. And so they're going to be compiling those and resubmitting those plans. They were fairly minor, but they were things that were important to really make sure that we're clear on the plans that we're putting. And this is again for the Fuller's Cross property, where we're going to have the drive line come through off of Fuller's Cross and intersect with our drive line on the main campus. The idea is that it will help to alleviate some of the traffic on Fuller's Cross, because they'll be able to come in through that part of our campus and then exit off of North Lakewood. We have Z Development that is also needed to understand how big the basketball court. Again, we've talked about we're wanting to have that basketball court where the portables are right now. And so they need to make sure that that doesn't affect our present retention pond that we have. And we're working on that and hoping to get more of that information when we have our weekly update with Leanne from Building Hope on Thursday. We're also looking at the soccer field, and so she's been able to take in all that information for the soccer field off of Fuller's Cross. And we, Dave met with Leanne and Justin from Building Hope to examine again the deterioration of IMO's retention pond. So again, unfortunately, because the repairs are going to be so high, that this is going to have to wait, even though we'd like to see that happen sooner than later. Right now, it looks like it's going to have to wait through this bond process and the takeout. But that is all part of the work that we're wrapping up into that side of the bond process with Z Development. Any questions about that? Exciting to, think we're going to have a basketball court and a soccer field. I am going to hold on to those like tightly. They can't go away. And then at the IMHS building, where we, have the traffic study, we're about 3 weeks in, and so that should be completed. These are all those things that we needed to do for due diligence in preparing our special exception before we even go before the city. So lots of people, Building Hope, Leanne's team has been working hard to make sure that she makes the contacts that she needs to do, and that we've been following up with everything we've had to do to meet people over there, to get them in, to make the inspections that they've been doing. So we have the ALTA that has come in. They've already have filled out their report, and they just need to have it signed off on Green Access's insurance. There was a small correction on the easement. And then we also had the AEI consultants. They came in last Thursday, and hopefully their report will be done in 2 to 3 weeks. Again, these are all the various pieces of due diligence that we have to do so that we can present to the board. We have, oh my goodness, mine just went blank with our architect, Travis. Travis has been working through, we had 2 options that we looked at. We chose the one option that would actually give us even a few extra rooms. Because due to the way in which the HVAC is set up, we can't just easily go in and make every combination of the rooms work out, but we're happy with what we've been able to come up with. Travis went in and looked at the HVAC and to make those decisions about which rooms we could really combine. So on our weekly building meetings, that's what we've been doing. And we gave him the go ahead to start with option 1 so that he can start doing that work and getting that back to us as soon as possible. Going back to what Brett had to say for timeline, I agree that I'm really hopeful that a timeline for all this financing maybe as early as late February and early March, because we really want to, we got to get shovels in the ground, even though there's not much ground over there. We got to get shovels in the ground over at IMO as well. And we want to get that started as soon as possible. And I know Leanne's looking for May as a start date for all that work. Any questions about all that? I would like to say just real quick, I said something in the newsletter for you. Got a phone call from the city of Ocoee too. Sergeant was talking to me about the way in which, if you guys don't know this, they are, I've talked about this before, the corner of Fuller's Cross and North Lakewood is going to be a turnaround. And so there are plans to go ahead and change the way that road goes North Lakewood, the way you literally, right now, you come off of Claricona, Ocoee, you technically drive onto North Lakewood and it snakes around going down and then comes out again, it goes west and then it goes south. And so basically from the turnaround that's going to be at Fuller's Cross and North Lakewood, it's actually going to go straight from that turnaround straight out to the traffic light. So that actually is going to happen sooner than later. And they are planning to make that happen. Like they're expecting that work to be done before the spring break. So I'll be noticing parents as I find out about that. They will let me know as soon as they know what the window is, because there's going to be a window of time in which if you come off of the 429, if you're coming west at all, that you will have to go down to Adair and circle back at the school that way instead of coming straight off of Claricona, Ocoee. So I put that in the newsletter, just giving everybody a heads up. And he said to me today that hopefully we'll know, sometime in January, about what the actual window is. And then outside of that, I just had a few operational updates. We are continuing to advertise for an ESE teacher. While we have found somebody on staff that is interested in taking the ESE certification. And so we're excited about that possibility. We have our application, which is live. And so we're building on that. People that are excited to be a part of our community. And Kathy has already started with live tours. So we got started a little bit earlier than I thought with the live tours. They began, actually, when I wrote this, I thought it was, our meeting was last week. So it'd be like 2 weeks ago. We've had now 2 weeks of live tours that have started, which again makes us feel like we're getting a little bit back to what we normally expect. We will just look at COVID-19 when we come back in January. And the final thing is I gave you the link that you can look up our survey results for the ESSER 3. No surprise that we heard from a lot of families that do want to see tutoring as much as possible, as well as obviously extra staff. And we're looking for opportunities to be able to hire some extra, possibly if they're not teachers, maybe we can get some extra teacher assistants. Those positions have been a little bit easier to fill. So we're going to keep on pushing through to see if we can use some of our ESSER 3 funds to do that. We are not sure when those funds will actually be available, but we're hoping come February we can start putting in for refunds for that. But in the meantime, we're going to get our tutoring program started. And I'm mindful of Dave and our budget, because if we don't get the money paid back, got to be careful about how much money we can spend. But we have about 24 teachers that are going to be starting tutoring. A focus will be for the element of the primary, the kindergarten through, because it has to be part of our charter since they're state funds. So for the younger students, we'll be focusing on reading, and for the older students at upper L through middle school and high school, will be a focus on math. I sent you that just best practices around research around tutoring, and we're using those practices and putting that in place, and I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about the plan. So they're going to be very small groups. We would like to be able to offer it to more people, but the reality is we really want to stay as close to what the research says that we should do if we're really going to see the results for these students that we need to see. And then as more money becomes available, we'll be able to expand it if we have the teachers who make it, if teachers make a decision that they also would like to join. Anyway, any questions?
You had mentioned additional staff. Is there, are you looking to bring on additional like a TAs? Do you have like, are you looking to add those in now to help supplement some of those tutoring programs as well? Is that being advertised? Do we need to help advertise?
So for those positions, the tutoring, we're looking more for UCF students that may be interested in that. We have hired, like I said before, we've hired a few, and we do have some of them asking some of their friends if they're interested in helping, especially in terms of we're doing daytime quote tutoring, meaning the tutoring, if you saw in that article, it talked about the high dosage tutoring that can happen during the day. So in the middle school and high school, there's more of that opportunity to do that. And then we're also looking to see other ways to support student services through extra personnel if we can't find the ESE, because we could actually hire not just one, we could hire probably two just student services people. So we're looking for maybe some teacher assistants that can help in those areas.
Good. I know we do the internship through, like the social services, but do we have any connection with any of the schools for the internships through like UCF, through the College of Ed? Have we had an intern? Like we have any clinical educator teachers who are trained who qualify for that?
Yep. And we haven't, we haven't had one in a couple of years, but we do have teachers that are trained, have clin ed. And we, hopefully this year will be more of a year because obviously they couldn't have, the typical kind of internships. So, we do apply when they do ask for those as well.
Great way to get them in the door early.
Yeah.
Train them right.
Yes, that's right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, that's it for me.
All right, thank you very much.
Welcome.
We had a lot there. I thought maybe we just touch on finance. Philip, quick update there.
Yeah, it's decently short today. Overall, we're moving in the same direction we have been, continuing to receive bond or various grant dollars coming in. Finally completed ESSER 1. I got the last dollars in from that. Dave's moved forward with submitting additional dollars out on that one for ESSER 2. What were some of the other little updates? One of the items I did touch on with him was to say, hey, I see a $50,000 security deposit or escrow deposit. Is that something that causes you angst or something that we're like, yeah, we can make this work? And yeah, we can make this work. On the cash flow front, a couple of items that are still outstanding. One, back early in the year, we'd gotten the approval from Building Hope to pull some of the dollars out of our reserve fund when our cash was a little on the extra tight side. We haven't put that back yet, as one area that is still outstanding is we're about $100,000 short. I don't remember the exact number, but give or take, related to the teacher salary increase adjustment. So that's that TSIA. OCPS is still in negotiations related to their contracts with their teachers. So as a result, the state's not sending dollars to them, so they are not sending dollars to us. So it's one of those annoyances we all get to, roll our eyes and shrug. So we're kind of penciling in a connection between those two events. So when we do get that TSIA, then we'll replenish our reserve account that we have in requirement with Building Hope. And that is one of those that's outstanding. I think outside of that, no real surprises. Year to date, we're running pretty solid. I think Finance Committee, oh, I need to touch on you with you on that, Patrice. I think we might bump for December and use our tomorrow meeting and just meet in January, but you good with that? Okay. So we'll still review financials and I'll pass them on to the board, but we'll handle it through email. School's out next week and staff are going on various fun adventures and just not working. So I don't blame them. I think that covers all of it, unless any of you have any finance related questions or things you're specific on. I know most of the details Patrice dealt with because a lot of it all ties into around the building. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any updates from anyone else, committees wise?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. We had our Giving Tuesday 2 weeks ago. And thank you to all the parents and faculty and community members that participated in that. We had $340 come in, which is fantastic. And then we had 5 families that won a brick. So they'll be getting an email from me to get their inscription of what they would like on the brick. I'm working on putting that together to get the order in. So right now, just getting information from anyone out there who had submitted an order. So you'll be hearing from me if you haven't already. And then ideally, I'll get the order in. Hopefully, we'll receive it relatively early in the first of the year, and then get the find a bricklaying specialist in the IMO community that's happy to assist, and we'll get those laid out. So that's what I have on that. And of course, working on some other things from a fundraising standpoint to really get us running for up and running for 2022. So.
And
That's all I
thank you, AJ, too. I also reached out, Kathy actually reached out to AJ too, we want to have a large brick in honor of Shelley Braswell. So
Yes.
we talked to AJ about that. So we're going to work that out as well.
Yep. And I'll send you the
fun
lines
now.
in length and everything
Yeah.
for that. So.
Yep. Have no problem with that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say thanks, AJ. It's great to have somebody back engaged in these items. It's just been something that, you know, as a board, we haven't had an opportunity to really pay attention to and drive over the last year or two. So appreciate your willingness to roll up your sleeves. I know this isn't necessarily your background or forte. Kind of felt like how I was a few years ago when I got involved in it. It's just figure it out as you go. But, you know, you're doing a good job. You've asked the right questions. You're heading down the good path. So thank you. Appreciate your
No problem. My
leadership.
pleasure. It's a good junior board member task, and luckily we have Kevin to give our expertise in bond counsel. So I'll gladly take up these reins.
Cool.
Anything else before we adjourn?
Just have to say we have a good team. Really appreciate everybody on this board. I know we're heading into the holidays, so the partnership that we've got with the administration, the team here at the board, like I feel like we've got a lot of good people doing a lot of good things right now. So it's been a wild last 20 something months, and I just look forward to flipping the page and going into 2022. So hope everybody has a happy holidays, happy new year. Lots of stuff to look forward in 22. So I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you. Thanks to all the public. And I see some staff and teachers on the call as always. There's a few of you guys that I know always show up and I love it. So appreciate everybody in the community for everything you guys do, and just happy holidays, and hope everybody has the time to disconnect and spend some time with loved ones and just, you know, enjoy the season. So have a great night and rest of the week, and then we can all be done for a little bit.
Thank you. Agree.
Good.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
Have a great holiday.
Guys.
Bye.
Happy holidays, you guys.
Bye.